Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout. We're an entrepreneur and therapist exploring how technology is shaping mental health and what it means for how we live, connect, and care for ourselves. I'm Toni Teixeira. I'm the therapist.
And I'm Jackie Toale. I'm the entrepreneur. How are you doing this week, Toni? What's new?
I'm doing really well this week. It's a good week. I don't know, just the weather is really beautiful. New Jersey's
Oh,
having some
jealous.
really lovely weather. So I'm just kind of vibing in between clients, going outside, hanging out on the deck a little bit, and even doing some work out there. So I'm
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
just loving the weather. How about you? What's happening?
I'm the opposite of loving the weather. It's like 90 degrees before 9 a.m. down here. But I am definitely having a lot of fun getting out and doing a lot of community events. So meeting folks that are involved in the not-for-profit space in my community and seeing all the cool work that's going on. And so I'm really finding a lot of joy and inspiration and community and doing that kind of stuff. So
That's wonderful.
I'm
Are
loving
you
it.
doing do you do rescue stuff with animals?
I do. I
Yeah.
work at a rescue, and I actually
Give him a shout out, Jackie.
it's called Nate's Honor, and they're awesome. And I actually help with the volunteer program, and that I train new volunteers there. So I'm actually doing that this afternoon. But we've got a lot of really awesome. I'm baking cookies for another group that does low cost spay and neuter for the community called ARC, and so I'm excited to go see those guys tomorrow as well. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
That's really cool. Really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to talk to you about this week's topic. And
Me
I
too.
know we've got two different pieces of media for folks this week because we were listening to the article about 5 days ago, I heard a podcast and I was like, oh, Toni, I got to throw this in too because it kind of is right along the same lines. So today we're talking about AI and loneliness. And our first piece of media is a Fortune article or commentary from Clay Routledge. And he is an existential psychologist, which I can explain to people what that is. But he says he spent 25 years studying loneliness and AI is about to make it much worse. And then the other piece of media is the podcast The Daily from May 28th, which I don't think you can listen to for free anymore. I just tried to pull it up and re-listen to it. Grr. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's out there somewhere, but it's called Can AI Make People Feel Less Lonely? And it kind of hones in on one sort of story of a tech implementation in the elder space. So, Toni, what'd you think about this?
Spoiler alert, right? It doesn't help people feel less lonely. We'll just start right there.
Shocking.
Shocking news. What's interesting though is I think that Mark Zuckerberg and some of the other AI giants have been really trying to make an argument for AI helping people who are feeling lonely and feeling like more connected, to help them feel more connected. And it's really having the opposite effect on people. So, because what's really interesting about it is that it's not just about talking to or talking at someone. Because if you think about it, it's like, okay, you have access 24/7,
Yeah.
right? To be able to talk, uh, but it's not really to someone and it's not relational at
Yeah.
all. And I think one of the studies they did was looking at journaling or talking to
College
a
students.
person, right? College
Yeah.
students talking to a person versus journaling versus talking to a chatbot. And the journaling and the chatbot really were on the same kind of the data showed that those are very similar.
Yeah.
And the people who made the most improvement were the ones who were able to actually text with someone who was a live human being. So it
Right.
wasn't really the action of just giving information. I'm really careful, I notice, about the words that I'm using here because when I take the human out of it, I want to use a different word. I don't want to use the word
That's so
share,
interesting. Yeah.
right? So I keep pausing because I'm thinking about that. So when you're texting someone, you're sharing information versus kind of like talking at a screen.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it's very different. What was your take about this?
I found it so interesting. The thing that was a gut punch for me, and because I had read this article, like I said, and then as I was listening to that podcast and I was driving in for work and I was having these really mixed feelings because just to sort of summarize that real quick for folks, It's about a woman who is in her like 80s, and she got this device, trying to think of the name of it, but it kind of looked like a lamp, and it was like an AI powered companion sort of thing. And at first she didn't like it, and then she started interacting with it more. And then like when the power went out, like she almost got like panicked because like her companion wasn't there. And it was one of those things as like it was a beautiful kind of story about watching this woman kind of like at least have some sort of companionship in her life. And then at the same time, it was like this really icky feeling about like, that's what like, we want for our elders in our society? Like we want them to like be so isolated that they need tech companions because there's no community around them anymore. And so I think that really hit me.
That's really sad. That's
Yeah.
really sad. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it really was both of those feelings. So I was genuinely happy for her. She had been lonely in a way she couldn't put words
Right.
to. And the cognitive improvements that she had because she was interacting with this thing on a daily basis. And you know what I mean? There were real positives in it.
Right. So, what's really important though is to not think of AI maybe as a replacement for these relationships. It certainly can supplement relationships, but for it to be the sole, kind of way people are going to communicate, it takes away a really basic need, and that's belongingness. And the article talked about that, right? So when we're like, it's an evolutionary need to belong, because
100%.
if we were born and we didn't have anyone to take care of us, we would die, right? Little babies that are helpless. So that basic need for belongingness is really just wired. And the belongingness has to do with reciprocity in relationships. I'll tell you a little story, something that happened to me, and how I learned this personally in a relationship, in a friendship. Many years ago, I was a new social worker, and I had a friend who was going through a lot and some really heavy stuff. And I thought, I'm going to show up for her. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to really listen and support. I didn't want to give her advice. I was good about my boundaries and my social work hat, right? Like you really, we don't want to give people advice. So showing up for her over and over and over again. And then one day she said to me, Toni, I keep asking you how you are, and I notice, you're not saying anything. She said, if this, and I love this because she was really clear about it. She said, if this friendship is going to work, I'm going to need to be there for you and show up for you. And you're really going to have to share. And it was like, it was eye-opening for me, because I really thought I'm doing so much for her, and I wanted
the gold star friend. Yeah.
Right. But I wasn't, because I wasn't giving her any of myself.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important in relationships. And that's not what we're getting when we're with the chatbot. No matter how much we think it might have a personality, or we can help shape its personality or give it a name, it's going to be there whenever we need. It's not going to create boundaries for us.
It has no agency as to whether or not it shows up, right? Like it's always there.
Right. It's always there, and it can't give us, like, you could ask your home device, your Alexa or your Google Nest or whatever, like, what song does it like or whatever. And it might make up a thing or two, but that's not really who it is. It's not really sharing. It's not like a person who's sharing themselves. And I think like last week too, we were talking about that co-creation that happens with a therapist. Now you might say, I'm going to jump ahead, because you might even say, well, Toni, when you're working with a therapist, right, this should work for therapy, because therapists don't really share their personal life. I don't really share my personal life with my clients. However, I share part of myself while we're in the therapeutic relationship and while we're in the moment. And there's important stuff that's going on, including I might feel feelings that are coming up based on what my client's saying. And I'm going to want to share that with them, because my being able to be impacted by them is important information for their nervous system. When, by the way, sometimes I do, depending on the information, I might share something that's kind of a little personal, because it's related to something that's important in the communication and where that client's at. And I might think it's like, just something that can be good information for them so they're not feeling so alone, to
For
normalize
sure.
certain things. And a chatbot can't do that as a therapist, and it can't do that as a friend.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a beautiful example of kind of that difference, right? Of like showing up. I think it was so interesting because of Clay. In his article, he said his research on nostalgia, which is that bittersweet longing for the past, revealed something surprising. The memories people return to most powerfully are almost never about personal achievement. They're they're all about other people being cared for, showing up for someone else, belonging to something larger than themselves. Which I
Wow.
was like, whoa, like makes sense, right? People
Mhm.
say when you're on your deathbed that you're not thinking about, I wish I would have worked, 60 hours a week instead of 40,
Right.
or like you're thinking about those people and relationships. And so it makes sense, but I hadn't quite thought
Right.
about it as it relates to nostalgia overall.
Right. Yeah. I love that you brought that up about like really just at the end of life, that moment of like, how do we want to be remembered? What do we want to remember? What might we wish we had more of? It's certainly not, I wish I worked harder, longer hours, right?
Right.
It's usually about the memories and the people, and the experiences that we might have had. I like a long time ago stopped buying myself stuff, and I like to have experiences. I like
Yeah.
vacations and to go places. And even when my kids were little, holidays, when they got to a certain stage, they had so many, you know,
All the stuff.
toys, all the stuff. And we did like a lot of Broadway plays that would be like gifts
That's
for them.
cool.
And we would
Yeah.
go as a family, and that's connection and memories about what we did together. So yeah, I think it's really important. You say, you've said like you use your kind of AI every day probably, right? Because you do a lot of work. Do you have like any particular interaction that stands out in your mind that had moved you emotionally in any way?
No. No.
Okay.
And even when I've tried, like I've only tried a few times to use it for anything that like is any sort of like self-reflective work whatsoever. Usually I'm using it for like bouncing ideas off of, or like helping me gather information and stuff like that. But like, yeah, just really robotic, almost like, saying the things, right? Like, I hear you or whatever. But yeah, it felt really hollow and never really stuck. And
Right.
I've used a lot of apps too, where they're like, "Oh, our AI companion is here," and it's like, I'm not, no,
We are feeling human beings. We are
yeah,
feeling entities, and AI can't make us feel. We can feel understood, like that's a feeling, right? Like, oh, I feel understood. But feeling other feelings, we're
yeah,
usually not gonna like, we're not gonna, well, although maybe some people do feel loved, but do they feel moved in
right,
some way? What actions can they take to love back?
yeah,
They might be able to say things, but we also kind of are three-dimensional figures too, and use
yeah,
more of ourselves than just kind of our eyes, like as senses and what we
for
see,
sure,
words and feelings. Like there's just so much more to us, and I think it really in some ways it takes away the basic need of connection, and it
yeah.
has like kind of a false front to that.
I think
Yeah.
you're right. And I was kind of thinking, well, we form bonds with things like deep emotional bonds with entities that aren't human, right? I
Yes.
love my dog. Like you
I love my
love your
dogs and my
pets.
cat. Yes, I do.
I know you do, right? And
Right.
and people have even some of those bonds for like fictional characters and books that they've read,
Right.
or other things. And I'm like, so is AI that different? Or, is it that much more
Okay. Well,
removed? But like with pets, like, and
while
like
you're
there's a feeling back and forth and whatever, but they still lack a lot of agency,
yeah,
you know?
there is reciprocity with our animals, as
Yeah.
you were talking, and I brought up the image of my loved furry ones in my mind. I could feel the feelings of and the memories of, my that little wet nose on my nose.
Oh yeah.
And even what flashed through my mind, I had a very beloved pet who, at the end of his life, like it just kind of flashed in my mind, having to lovingly say goodbye to him.
Yeah.
So I had like all of those moments just kind of flash through as we're talking about them, and could feel some of those feelings come up. I don't think we get the same kind of thing that happens. Like when I asked you earlier about what do you remember that moved you when you sat down and you talked to your AI, even when you were looking for self-reflection. I don't think you could access a memory in the
No,
same way that you and I probably access memories about our pets, and feelings came up.
for
This
sure. But I
this is the
also
scare.
don't turn to
Yeah,
my AI for companionship. And I
that's
think that
true.
people who do that might be able to pull up a simulacrum of those feelings, or maybe
Yeah.
it's genuine feelings on their end, but it's like, because it's not reciprocated.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just actually going to say that about what's scary about this is if you have the simulation of a relationship and it does ring hollow, let's say for people who really have depression, maybe thoughts of self-harm, and they're interacting in this simulated relationship and it's feeling hollow, it might feel like, okay, I that's all I have, and now I don't have people, this doesn't work. Oh my goodness. What the outcome of that might be, further self-harm, or spiraling down even more, because it may feel like that's not working, but
Yeah,
that's not working because that's not another human being.
right,
So I think that that's kind of what's scary for me, for people who it feels like it's working, but they may feel this hollowness and thinking that there's something wrong with them, but it's
right.
really about not having a relationship. Is that making
Yeah,
sense?
for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And like, what an interesting, component too when you start to bring in the corporate and the capital side of things to the conversation too, right? Because like, let's say that these tools are genuinely created because of a desire to help people solve some of these issues around loneliness or whatever. Like, if they're paid based on engagement, is there really an incentive for them to get people to a state of wellness? Even if they could, right? I'm not saying that, but even if they could, like, are you kind of like cutting that off,
You
right?
you mean
Because
like the corporate machine of it all and the money
yeah, like,
making
can you
part of it?
imagine BetterHelp being like, "You're done. You're well.
You
Go
don't
live
have to
your
be in
life."
therapy
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, stop spending your whatever it is a month here. Like, I don't
It's a conflict of interest. Yeah,
yeah, it really seems like a
you're
deep one.
absolutely right about that. And now there are no guardrails on AI. I think, right, there was one of the bills that was passed. They said, well, they can't really kind of put any regulation,
Right.
which is just kind of considering all the harm that has been done,
Yeah,
that's kind of scary.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't
No regulation.
and, like, I mean, honestly, when you look about across the people that are at the highest levels of our government too, like, that like, are they really do they understand it on any level? Like, how deep like, are they the people that should be writing these rules? Probably not.
Hmm.
Anyway, but yeah, that there's really no willingness to have the conversations, and
Hmm.
the other thing I found just this week when I was looking around, that's just slightly off topic but wild, was this idea of all these people that are protesting data centers in their area.
Right.
And have you seen these posts on social media that's like a big
Yes.
field and it's like mode to say like not 1 inch of this, whatever. But all those images are made by AI.
Really?
It's like, come on. Yeah.
Gosh.
It's like, so the AI slop is like coming for like the AI the underlying infrastructure. It's just, it's wild and disconcerting, but it's moving really quickly, right? And to put these types of tools in the hands of vulnerable people first seems like a strange choice.
Yeah, actually that's what they said. Like the number one use right now is for chatbots like companions in therapy.
Yeah.
Right. And so here's, vulnerable populations. When we were talking about regulations, one of the things that flashed through my mind is like, you can regulate this up the wazoo, but it's misplaced in that we're not addressing the systemic issue, which is there are a lot of lonely people, there's a lot of isolation, there's a lot of vulnerability and vulnerable populations that are not getting support. Instead of regulating the shit out of this, let's go back
Yeah.
to the roots of how can we, support people, and have a society around supporting people and helping people. People are turning to other people, like you mentioned, this 80-year-old woman who's really has no choice but
Yeah.
to use something like this rather than find a community and have people who are going to support her. We're just not built for that as a society, that kind of support for our elders, for our children, for people with mental illness.
But it seems to me like if you could have an AI robot in your house to be friends with, that could also perhaps connect you with the 85 other elderly people that have those robots and let you have human conversations. So it's not, maybe it's 80% robot and 20% human,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like, I think that
Right.
again, but there's not the motivation to do that, right? Because then that could take you off the platform.
Right. Right. Well, and they're using, and the thing that I think is like kind of the I don't know what word I'm looking for, but what they do is they train these chatbots, the therapy chatbots and like the friend chatbots on what people actually say, but they're not really people. It's like kind of this
Right.
false thing that's going on, false security about like, talking to another person. It's so lifelike,
Right. But
but
just
not
not
really
quite.
real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not quite there. It's kind of cool though. Like I was just thinking when you're talking about that too, like you can call someone from your Alexa.
Right. It's like
So,
there's a way that technology could integrate human connection,
yes, can
like,
actually
and
connect
leverage it
real
and connect
people.
people and build community, but instead it's, again, I think it's because of like the motivations, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's about isolating us. Like, that's what technology really, if you look, in my opinion, has done, right? It's really segmented a lot of people into like smaller and smaller groups. It's like made it where people like feel super jealous of like other people's lifestyles and stuff
Yeah.
because they're only seeing the good parts. It hasn't it hasn't lived up to the promise, but it really could, just by making those simple, you want to talk to somebody? Here's Fred. Like, he's also up and wants to talk to somebody, like whatever.
Yeah. Mhm.
And like actually building some meaningful communications. And again, I think there were great things that this thing did. Like, it checked on her 6 times a day, and it, like I said, helped with the cognitive function stuff, and like did things that, augment that. But I think it's just not a replacement for it.
Mhm.
And it's really sad if we think of it as one, and it's really gross that we would push that on the vulnerable folks first, in my opinion.
Well said. And I think that I think you really just summed it up. It's not a replacement, and it's really scary to think about what if we treat it as a replacement, what it can do to the most vulnerable populations. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good takeaway.
Well, what a interesting topic. Hey, I know I mentioned it at the top, but did you want to hear that definition of existential psychologist?
Psychologists, yes.
Yeah. So, existential psychologists generally guide clients through the 4 ultimate concerns of life, and they're real fun ones: death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. I feel like you could say some of those in a nicer way, maybe, but maybe I'm part of the problem.
Shouldn't existential psychologists be part of the development of something
Yeah,
that is about the
addressing these
people
things.
and
Yeah,
like addressing these things, because these are really deep big things, especially isolation
for
in our
sure.
society. I mean, like kind of loneliness. The whole point of this article was about helping people who are feeling lonely, right?
Yeah,
So why do we not have the players involved? Why is, this is where like you and me come together, right? Like why do we talk about this? Because if you're doing technology to help people, you
right.
need to have mental health professionals on board
Yeah,
to create something
help
that's
guide
actually
something.
useful and not
Absolutely.
harmful, right?
100%.
But or do they have
Who knows? I
mental
mean,
health professionals who are doing this, or are they just like harnessed,
yeah. Oh,
like
bring him in for
let's
this.
record your sessions,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah, not like on the ground floor of figuring it out. Look, you figured out in 2 minutes. You're like, oh, this would be really good. Like we can connect, like do kind of a match.
Right. Like
Fred
connect
needs
people.
somebody and Mary needs
Right.
someone. Let's get them to talk to each
And it's like,
other.
well, how do we deal with trolls? Well, you stop matching that person with people for a while. Like, hey, you really said some offensive stuff.
Right. Well, there's
You get a
the
timeout.
moderators. So, like, if
Yeah.
you go on, like, there's a lot of boards for like domestic violence, people with sexual assault, and there's usually a moderator and a lag time, so people can go on and talk and get support. And sometimes there's a troll that's on. Well, the person who's moderating will make sure that's never even seen,
Yeah.
and kind of get that person off the board. So we need people.
Right.
An AI can do that.
Yeah.
They could probably monitor the board and like kind of check for that language and kick people off who,
Yeah.
are inappropriate.
Put people in
Yeah.
a timeout
Yeah.
until they get some
Timeout.
individual human to
Yeah.
human talking to about how we
Yeah.
behave in society. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. I'm curious, do you get any of those ads since you're closer to the New York area for that service that'll come clean your house for free?
No.
Creepy
What
as
well
all get out.
wait, robots come to clean your house for
No,
free?
it's a person
It's a
or
person.
people, but they
Yes.
wear cameras everywhere and they'll come clean your house for free because they're trying to get the information so that they can eventually train robots that can clean your house for free.
No.
But they're in your house. So they know Tony's got half a gallon of almond milk left in the fridge. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
not just the data to train on cleaning, I would think. And I just wanted to throw that out there because I've heard a few things about it. I cannot think of the name of it. But New York, I think, was their target first market that they launched in.
Yeah.
And I just want to warn people, it might be great I would love to have somebody come clean my house for free.
Right.
But all the data that they're gathering about you that isn't just going to be used to help people clean their houses might not be worth the trade-off. So
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about, privacy issues. We give some of that up when we're kind of used to create
yeah,
some of this technology. It's like
100%.
it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and to be fair, if we would have started with the house cleaning robots, I might have been more willing. But like that we've started with like therapy for vulnerable populations and my house
Yeah.
still I have to clean, like no thank you.
Isn't this interesting though? Or we could probably talk about this for hours. I won't go on and on about it, but we live in a society, or we live in, a democracy that is built on this principle of individual rights and privacy concerns and needs. And this is running rampant right? Through our society, where we're really, a lot of the privacy is taken away from us. So it's really curious how that happened. Not surprised that it's probably connected to corporations and big bucks and money and all of that stuff, and how that can even change how
For sure.
we look at privacy, because companies are making money.
Well, think about like when you were a kid. And again, like I just didn't see a whole lot of things where you were like waving away your right to privacy. Whereas now you probably get 3 or 4 a day. Where it's like, click on this, and you're like, oh,
Right. And in small print, just the act of clicking on it takes that away, and now you have a cookie on your browser, and they're
Yeah,
pulling information, or you're agreeing to something that you didn't really
right.
think of,
No, yeah.
right? Yeah. As part of,
They've worn us down.
doing research in graduate school, and institutional review boards. I mean, it's a very serious world of
For
doing
sure.
research and really giving informed consent. I mean, and I work with clients all the time, and we discuss consent and what they're consenting to, and using telehealth platforms, and what are the risks and benefits of that. But we click on things all day long and don't even really think about it, and there are risks.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, shake this one off, Toni.
We'll shake this one off this week, but it definitely gave me a lot to think about, Jackie. I'm really
For
appreciative
sure.
of this topic.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time this week, Toni, as always. And thank you
You're
to our
welcome.
wonderful audience. If you guys have not yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're really loving us, drop us a review. We will see you all next week. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.